Smithtown, location west side of Oakside Drive, north of Landing Avenue, Midtown. Property zone R43. Request variance to increase the maximum occupancy of required rear yard from 20% to 40%. Existing pool, court, and cabana. Increase the maximum permitted paved surface in the rear yard from 20% to 29%. Existing. Increase the maximum permitted paved surface in the side yard from 25% to 66%. Existing. Reduce the minimum distance from an accessory structure from any lot line from 10 feet to 0 court. I don't have my mic.
Could you say that again?
You could hear it pretty well.
I have a powerful voice.
I can hear it.
You want me to repeat it? Okay. Reduce the minimum front yard from 60 feet to 50 for an existing 61 square foot shed. Reduce the minimum front yard from 60 feet to 23 for a proposed 264 square foot shed. Increase the height of a proposed 264 square foot shed from 15 feet to 17. Reduce the minimum front yard from 60 feet to 22 for an existing generator. Reduce the minimum front yard from 60 feet to 0 for an existing 6.5 foot gate. Permit environmentally sensitive land to be altered. Slopes in excess of 15%. Permit a structure within 10 feet of environmentally sensitive land. Slopes in excess of 15%. Mr. Tramarko.
Good evening, Madam Chairman, members of the board. My name is Vincent Tramarko. I represent the applicant. Both Michael Cox and Mrs. Cox are here tonight. Just a brief history. I know it's late, but I probably started with the Cox family when they initially came to me and said, you know, we have a problem building this house because the building department has taken a position that there's a certain volume area in the clear story which they're counting as living space. And that was, I think, the beginning of that whole business about how you calculate floor area ratio. And I think that was in 2004 or 5. We came in here with a model of the house and tried as best we could to explain the situation, and the board did grant us a variance. Thereafter, we came in and got variances for retaining walls. But after the permit was granted for the house, one of the things that happened is we had to go in prior to building the house and put in the swimming pool and the tennis court and a number of retaining walls because there was no way to get onto this property once the house was built. So we did get a permit for the swimming pool. We didn't get a permit for the sports court or basketball court because honestly we didn't know any better with respect to that. Now, another interesting thing is that when you look at this property, obviously it's on the water, on part of the river, but it's high up. It's not a piece of property that you would look in a horizontal direction and you can see everything that the house has, all the accessory buildings and so forth. So I guess what I'm trying to say is all of these things, which there are many, really don't have an adverse effect on the character of the neighborhood because the neighborhood doesn't see them. And also, for example, take the fence or the gates that are 6.5 feet. They're 30 feet back into the driveway. So you might see them if you're driving down the road one way, and you're not going to see them driving down the other way. What happened here was when we were building the house, Well, let me go back a little bit. When Mr. and Mrs. Cox bought this property, they bought it from Vito Poveromo, who subdivided the property into 2 lots. And when they bought it, they searched the title, and there were no covenants or buffer areas listed on the title. And that's where it should be when you do have buffers. So when Mr. Cox commenced building, he had no idea that there was any buffer requirements. And I'm not the only person that's saying that. When Allison, I think her name then was Murray, or
No, Felt.
it's now Murray.
It's now Murray.
She wrote a report for the town board, for the LWRP, and one of the things that she points out is that he really, well, they couldn't have really known any of this stuff because there was no covenants filed. And it would be natural to assume that you could build certain things, and there wouldn't be a 25-foot and a 60-foot proposed buffer area because none was ever known to them or filed anywhere. So, you know, we started off with this situation and tried to do the right thing, and we come up with this problem of buffers. Now, it's on the river, and one of the things that we did finally get from the state DEC, who does an ample amount of investigation and doesn't give out permits very gratuitously, they approved all of the work on the site. The only thing that they required us to do is to plant more trees between my client's property and the river. And the reason for that, which I'll never understand, but I guess I do understand it, that the guy in the canoe shouldn't see Mr. and Mrs. Cox's house or their outbuildings. It should look like it was a couple of 100 years ago. So they planted the trees, and the trees are up, and I think as part of that recommendation from Allison Murray is that, or she does state that they put in extra trees, and it seems to be okay with the way they did it. In any event, the DEC came down there and said that they granted them a permit and said, okay, look, you made a couple of errors, but you've replanted and you've made this thing look like a beautiful site, even from the river. Now, one of the issues that came up and with the planning department was, if you look at the map, you'll see that there's a cemetery kind of in the middle of the property, and it's, I don't know what you call it. I wasn't good in geometry, but it looks like not even a parallelogram. Whatever it is, it's right smack in the middle of the property, and it's a cemetery that the town has the obligation, I guess, to take care of it. So one of the things that happened as we were negotiating with the town and you know, saying to Frank DeRubius and the councilman, look, first of all, we didn't know about these buffers because they weren't of record. Secondly, we will give you buffers, but we can't give you the same buffers that were proposed in the beginning because we violated. And we did go to the planning board, and the planning board said, come to the Board of Appeals. And so why do I talk about the cemetery? Because what the planning department said, specifically Frank DeRubius, look, we have to get to the cemetery. So why don't you dedicate a piece of Mr. Cox's land, Mr. and Mrs. Cox's land, and so we have access to the cemetery. I said, why do we have to give it to the town? Why don't we just give you an easement, gives you the same rights to go in and out to maintain that cemetery, which, by the way, Mr. Cox maintains it now just because he wants it to look right. And I think he's afraid of ghosts or something, but anyway, he takes care of it. And so we proposed to give an easement in lieu of Frank DeRubius's request to take a substantial chunk of property. And I guess one of the reasons, I don't guess, I know, one of the reasons was he said, well, you violated the buffer. So this way, this is kind of a, I don't want to use the word punishment, but a way of kind of giving back to the town. And we said, we can give back to the town by giving you an easement, and you'll have the same rights to go up and down that property, and my client will take care of it, which probably, if the town owned it, and the town is busy enough with other things, probably wouldn't. Mr. Cox also indicated that if they wanted, he would pave it or brick it or whatever it takes to make it accessible and certainly look like part of the property. That's still kind of up in the air. I've talked to the couple of the members of the town board. They seem to be in favor of an easement. I think Fred Colandrino, deputy town attorney, is looking into it. Legally, there's no problem. It's just a question of, you know, how that situation will ultimately pan out. I'm sure that some of you members went to the property and you've seen the property. It's probably one of the nicest pieces of property in Smithtown, and certainly the houses should be in a magazine. So all of these requests that we're asking for, although there's a lot of them, in this situation, we don't feel it would have an adverse effect on the character of the area. If anything, it just makes the area better. Again, it can't be seen by anyone. So if you're riding down the street, or you're looking up at a hill, as I said, you might see those gates, but it's only from coming down one side of the street. I forget which way, east or west, but so we don't feel it have an adverse effect on the property or on the surrounding neighbors. Would the benefit, could that be created by some other method? Not really, because if you did look at the property, it's a hilly piece of property. That's why at the last minute the town decided that we needed variances for steep slopes, and so that was the reason why the case was adjourned the last time, because my office didn't get it on time to the in the letter, and the letter didn't contain those two items. Whether the area variance is substantial. Not really when you think about it, because there's a lot of area that's not being used, that's controlled by the state DEC, so that when you look at the whole picture, it's not a substantial variance. And also when you consider the topography of the property and the odd shape of the property. Will it have an adverse effect on the environment? I don't think so. It's a one-family dwelling. There's Mr. and Mrs. Cox, and I believe 3 children that live there. They've tried to. They didn't try. I mean, it's probably one of the best houses built in the town of Smithtown, and it's impeccably maintained. So I don't know that there's going to be anybody here that would be objecting to our request. Now, the last consideration was the alleged difficulty self-created. The answer is yes and no. If we would have known about these covenants prior to buying the property, one, we might not have bought the property, and I don't know, I'm just speculating, or at least we certainly wouldn't have built those things that were built even prior to the house being built. We built the pool, as I said, and the sports court before we built the house, and many of the retaining walls, because you couldn't get in once you constructed the house. So I guess what I'm saying also is Mr. and Mrs. Cox really thought out this project. They didn't just come and do things willy-nilly. And they thought hard about what they were doing, and at the same time, they got stuck with this whole area of buffer and conservation easements. And they're not adverse to giving back to the town some buffer areas. We don't have a problem with that. And basically, that's what Allison Murray said in the LWRP, who did, I believe, recommend granting, along with certain conditions, obviously. So what I guess I'm asking this board to do is to look at the big picture, look at this house, look where it is, and think about what a benefit it is to the community. There is nothing here that would stick out like a sore thumb. There is nothing here that would make anybody say that visited the property that, wow, this is a hodgepodge of structures. It's anything but that. Every retaining wall is built out of stone. It's not a wood retaining wall. As a matter of fact, the town came to Mr. Cox and said, you know what, you have a ramp going down to your basement. We don't like this ramp going down to the basement because, I don't know, we think you might be putting cars down there or whatever. So at the cost of $8,000 to $10,000, we put steps in. So we really tried to cooperate with the town. They've been residents of the town for, I guess, since the house was built. They intend to stay as long as they're able, which I think will be a very long time. And we asked the board to consider this application favorably, as it really is, you know, one of the highlight houses in the town. As far as the buffers not being filed, that's something that, you know, we can deal with. It can't be the same buffers, but, you know, we don't have an objection to reasonable buffers. One of the suggestions that Planning Department made, Frank DeRubius, not David Flynn, I'm talking about Frank here, he said, well, why don't you have a walk, I don't know what you call it, David, a path so that people can walk a path behind, coming from the country club, and they could walk past a walking path. And even before Mr. and Mrs. Cox said anything, I said, no, I wouldn't want anybody walking in my backyard, as a compromise for not doing not following the buffers that they didn't know about to start with. So that's how we come to this business about getting to the cemetery, and our offer, again, being an easement, which I guess if you speak to your attorney or the town attorney, I'd rather have an easement and have the Coxes liable for anything that happens on that property, including maintenance, than have the town liable. So we asked the board for its favorable consideration. The request on the generator, that was given a CO according to Mr. Cox. I think it's, I don't know if John knows, that it's probably one of those necessity utilities that doesn't require a variance, but we've asked for it anyway, so.
Can I ask a question?
Yes, go ahead.
Mr. Tremarco, in the earliest part of the presentation, you mentioned that the DEC, I guess, required trees to be planted between the property and the river. I presume you mean between the house and the river? Were the trees planted off-site or on someone else's property?
No, I meant between the house and the river.
Okay.
At like the, what do you call it, the toe of the hill or the top,
Okay.
the top of the hill, going down
Probably
towards.
okay. Are
And-
the trees still there?
Yes.
Okay, thank you.
Right. Val, do you have anything that you want to? I think we need to.
Okay, Mr. Tramarko, there are some town records that, that we felt might be pertinent, and I know you have access to them, and we'd be happy to provide them to you if you don't. There's a list on top of what they are, and if you want, I can read them into the record. Okay. We thought they'd be pertinent and reflect on some of the things you were talking about. It's a memorandum from Frank to the board, to the chair and the members of the board. Per your request, attached are the following documents. Coastal consistency review for the subdivision known as Poveromo Estates dated 8/17/98. New York State DEC permit for subdivision and construction of the dwelling. Approved letter for the final plat of Poveromo Estates 6/2/1999. A sketch prepared by the planning department showing the area that the town board and planning board required to be kept as a conservation buffer area. Coastal consistency determination for the construction of the dwelling, garage, and one retaining wall dated 6/9/04. Board of Zoning Appeals decision letter approving numerous variances for the construction of the dwelling, detached garage, and one retaining wall dated 8/11/04. Declaration of covenants and restrictions that was filed by Vito Poveromo, the owner of the Poveromo Estates, dated 3/6/09. A sketch prepared by the planning department showing the conservation buffer area that was filed in the declaration of covenants and restrictions. Building department property card for the site. Memo from Frank DeRubi's to town board regarding violations on the site dated 3/26/10. A sketch prepared by the planning department showing the planning department's recommendation for bringing the existing basketball court retaining wall shed and proposed cabana into compliance with the town's LWRP dated 12/29/09. And then there are, all the attachments, which I don't know if you have them, but certainly we could provide them. And we just wanted this to be submitted into the records.
Who
for
wants
consider-
them submitted to the record? Who-
I do. Well, because of, we
No,
knew
but
that
I'm
somebody.
asking you, is it the planning department?
Yes.
Oh, okay. Just the planning department is submitting these. Okay. Obviously, I need a copy of all of that since it's being put into evidence.
Yes.
And it's the first time I've heard of it, so.
Let
I
me
just
ask
want to
you-
answer one thing. The date of what Mr. Poveromo filed was 2009, well past when the map was filed. And, the argument is a very valid one. In fact, like Allison said, we didn't know about those covenants because they weren't filed. So we would have no knowledge of a buffer area to stay away from certain areas, which again was Allison's report. Another thing that she brought up, and I think, well, maybe that was Frank DeRubius, who said innumerable amount of inspectors came to this site as the construction was going up. And nobody even mentioned the fact of covenants or the sports court, I guess because maybe they didn't know either. So, I mean, it wasn't like we built these things in secret. They were there, inspectors came in and out, and nobody gave them a clue as to these things until finally one day we made an application, I believe it was for the cabana, and the whole issue came to light. So it's kind of a thing where, and I think Mr. Poveromo's here tonight. I don't know if he's going to speak or not. I sure will. So in any event, we just like to wrap this up, get it done, and whatever we reasonably have to do, we'll do.
Okay. This is my question to you. I can close the hearing, but if you would like to have all of this, that we have submitted, and you want to keep the hearing open to a specific date so that you can give us more information, I'm willing to do that also.
Let me just confer for a second.
Okay.
If we could have, when is the next meeting, Madam Chair?
Would have to be April 12th.
Okay. Next meeting would be April 12th. Okay. Thank you.
Okay? All right. Now, should we make, send it, how do you want to handle this as far as making copies of all this?
Sure. Yeah,
Okay,
if it's part of the file,
okay,
anybody can have it.
all right, so we'll make copies, make sure that you get copies, that it has been filed. Okay? Thank you. Okay, is there anyone here that'd like to be heard on this application?
Yes, I would like to be heard.
All right,
Mr. Chairman.
Vito, come up, please.
I didn't get dressed up to come to this meeting. We're supposed to be at an Elks meeting tonight, so excuse me for being dressed in a tuxedo. Yes, I do.
Well, first of all, give me your name
Vito
and address.
Poveromo, the original founder and the developer of this Poveromo Estates, two-plot television subdivision that took 10 years to file.
Vito, please, please just hold on.
I just
Give me your name.
want this on the record.
I know that, I'll let you. Give me your name and address.
Vito Poveromo, 152 Oakside Drive, Smithtown, New York.
Okay, raise your right hand. Do you swear to tell the whole truth and nothing but the truth?
I do.
Thank you. Go
In the
ahead.
first place, I'd like to advise the town and the town attorney about the easement that they're trying to force on poor Mr. and Mrs. Cox. The town doesn't realize that for 55 years, the town has, by statute, had to maintain that cemetery. And they've been using a driveway that is right next door, the next lot past Mike's, which was my brother's lot. And they've been using it for 55 years, and by law, the town automatically has an easement to get to that cemetery from the next lot next door. It's a nice driveway, and it goes right to the cemetery. You can't get to the cemetery any other way. The planning board, when I was filing the map, made me add another 10 feet to the easement that goes down to Oakside Drive, and the easement is 20 foot wide, and if you stand on the curb, you can look 15 feet high is where the edge of the road is. You can't come up there. You can't impossibly get up near. But they insisted on enlarging the easement from 10 to 20 feet, and it's completely useless. The town has had the right of way for 55 years that I've been living there. So they don't have to worry about an easement. They have it by usage, by adverse possession. So you can advise that to the town attorney, and they can notify the people next door, and the people next door will give them no problem, allow him to come up once a year to cut the grass. And in fact, they don't have to come anymore, Mike, I know he's been doing it on his own. I'm very upset about needing a variance for a basketball court. This is a facility that everybody, you go down the street, they're all over the streets of Smithtown. Is everybody getting a variance to have a basketball court on their street? No. But why do you have to harass anyone that needs a facility like a basketball court or a tent? These are recreation stuff. They're not buildings. They're not structures. They're part of landscaping. And it seemed to me that there wants to be an harassment and hurting people to try to get what they want to build their beautiful home, their castle. I call my house my castle. I don't want nobody telling me what I want, the way I like it, or anything like that. Government is getting too big. We're losing all our rights. Get back to our Constitution. You watch television, watch Glenn Beck, and get a little education on what's happening to our country. A poor guy wants to do something that takes a year or two to get something done. You know how much that's costing us? You know why our country is hurting financially with the regulations on top of regulations on top of regulations? I ask you to review what you require for variances and eliminate them from the ordinances. And I would also like to say that I speak very strongly in favor of what this man has done with this piece of property that was mine for 56 years. And I used to have cranes, payloaders, and bulldozers parking there because I was there before there was any regulations or zoning. He made a beautiful building lot out of it, one of the nicest houses in Smithtown. Why harass a person? I'm strongly in favor, and I'd like to see the board make a decision so the man can go ahead and get his pool house built and not delay. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. Is there anyone else? Okay. This meeting is adjourned to April 12th. Okay? Thank you.
Okay.
Okay, and the next case is case 16362, Antonio Randazzo, 1401 Thompson Drive. Oh, that's not the location. All right. Location, west side of First Avenue, south of Long Island Railroad, Kings Park, property zone RM7. Variance to reduce the minimum lot frontage at setback line from 100 feet to 74 existing for an existing two-family dwelling. May I have your name, please?
Yeah, my name Antonio Randazzo.
And your address, Antonio?
It's 1401 Thomas Drive, Bayshore.
Okay. All right. Raise your right hand, please. You swear to tell the whole truth and nothing but the truth?
I do.
Thank you. Would you like this gentleman to speak for you?
My son is speaking for me.
Okay.
Madam Chair, don't forget,
Yeah.
we need the
Do
affidavits.
you have all the packets? Do you have everything? That's right. May I have your name and address, please?
My name is Vito Randazzo, 5 Short Court, East Northport, New York.
Okay. Raise your right hand. You swear to tell the whole truth and nothing but the truth?
I do.
Thank you.
Good evening. We are here to ask permission to reduce the frontage from 100 feet to 74, or 74 feet. We bought my parents, my parents bought the house in April of '09. When they bought the house, they were told from the realtor that it was a two-family house, a legal two-family house. Not knowing any better, they went ahead, they bought it. It was a foreclosure. So they went ahead and they bought it, and they rented it as a two-family. I want to say maybe a year later, we got our first notice that the house is illegal. So I took that letter and we came down to the planning department, and I actually spoke with a lovely lady over there, and she told me that we needed to, in order for it to be a two-family house, you need a minimum of 100 feet.
Right.
Now, being that they told us that the house predates and there was no record, the house is always, from what we understand, talking to the neighbors and everybody else, that the house has always been a two-family. There are houses, two-family, on the block, around, and basically we just want to clean up the file. The people that own the house before us, before they lost it to the bank foreclosure, they had put an application in, but they never went through. They never finished it. Being that my parents are the new owners, they just want to, do the right thing and legalize it. That's it.
All right. Planning?
Madam Chair, just for the record, this is a 1- and 2-family zone, and it requires 7,500 square feet per family and 50 feet of frontage per family. The property exceeds the minimum lot area requirement in a large way, and it doesn't comply with the frontage requirement. I believe it's to legalize two families in the existing residence, which for the most part has remained the same way for at least like the last 30 to 40 years. Based on that, I would say that the variance wouldn't change the character of the area. It wouldn't have an impact on the adjacent properties. It's also good for Long Island to try to encourage housing where you can. With the health department requirements to protect the groundwater, it's difficult to provide affordable housing on Long Island, or at least in Suffolk County, unless there is a sewer system, and there are no sewer systems in that area. So there's actually a public benefit to granting the variance.
Thank you. Gentlemen, any questions?
No question.
Okay. Thank you so much.
Thank you.
Is there anyone here that would like to be heard on this application? Hearing none, I'll entertain a motion to close the hearing.
So moved. Second?
Regularly moved in second. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Motion carried. Okay. Next case is case 16363, Teachers Federal Credit Union. Location, northeast corner of Motor Parkway and Moreland Road, Hauppauge Property Zone, LI. Request variance to reduce the minimum parking spaces from 2,579 spaces to 1,600.
Good evening.
Good evening.
My name is Robert Allen, A-L-L-E-N. I am the President and CEO of Teachers Federal Credit Union. Our current headquarters location is 2410 North Ocean Avenue in Farmingville, New York.
Okay, will you read? Do you swear to tell the whole truth?
After 2 hours, I got it. Okay.
Do you swear to tell the whole truth, nothing but the truth?
I do.
Thank you.
Okay.
And is this gentleman going to speak also? Yes. Okay, so why don't I just swear him in and then,
My name is Robert Morrissey with JRS Architect, 181 East Jericho Turnpike, Mineola.
do you need him to spell the last name, please?
Morrisey.
Okay. Do you swear to tell the whole truth and nothing but the truth?
Yes.
Okay, thank you. Go ahead.
And I will thank you all for serving in the positions that you're in and applaud your stamina because this is week after week for you, I can't imagine. We will, hopefully, be relatively brief. In May of 2010, Teachers Federal purchased the building at 102 Motor Parkway. The application that we have before you is reference to that property, and in the matter before you, I'm going to ask Mr. Morrissey that you just swore in. He is an architect from the firm of JRS Architects representing us in this matter, and I'd like him to present the details to you.
Good evening. Again, as Mr. Allen had mentioned, that back in May of 2010, teachers bought the building at 102 Motor Parkway from TriTech in the plan of making their new corporate headquarters for their growing institution. In the planning of the spaces and the programming, it was determined that there were certain functions that they needed that were best suited for the lower level of the building in lieu of the upper occupied office space floors. As part of this application, this necessitated a change of use of approximately 11,277 square feet of designated storage space on the lower level to office, meeting, and training room spaces. This would have an impact on the parking calculations on the site and necessitate this parking variance. In addition, there was a need identified for a backup generator to serve the computer room and certain customer service functions. And with that, based on several factors, it was determined that the best location was adjacent to the existing life safety generator located on grade outside of the northeast corner of the building. This location would encroach into a small portion of a currently landscaped area which houses land bank parking spaces. The spaces slated for the lower level are training rooms, three training rooms, a large dividable meeting space, as well as several small office functions, which require adjacency to the storage and file areas, which will also be housed in this lower level. The parking calculations for the complex were redone, and the required number of spaces rose from 2,514 to 2,579, an increase of approximately 65 spaces. As part of the Phase 1 approval previously issued for the 100 Motor Parkway building, case number 12609, a parking variance was granted for 1,605 spaces. When the Phase 2 of that development was undertaken in December of 2005, there was further relaxation granted from 1605 to 1601. Based upon the proposed uses of the building for teachers and the proposed change of use for the lower level, again, we were requesting a relaxation to a total of 1,600 spaces. In response to the considerations, we feel that granting of this variance would not have a negative impact on the adjacent properties and neighborhood. The site is obviously fully developed and located within the Hauppauge Industrial Park. Motor Parkway and along Long Island Expressway, or on the south side, there's a large hotel to the east, and the rest of the park is on the west side. There is already a parking variance in place, and we're at this point asking for only a relaxation of one additional space from that previously approved variance. Based on those facts, again, we do not feel that this is a substantial request. The benefit cannot be achieved by other means. These functions that we're proposing to locate in the lower level, due to security and weight restrictions of the storage that they have, and the necessity for the emergency generator, there's no other appropriate or economical feasible locations for those. We feel that the granting of this variance would not cause any adverse impact on the environment, again, for the reasons stated above. And the difficulty, while was created by the applicant and because of the change of use, the reasons stated previously we feel are reasonable. Thank you.
Well, let me just tell you.
Uh-huh.
You're missing 979 parking spaces. To me, that's very substantial.
Mm-hmm.
I don't know how the other people on the board feel, but I think we need a parking study. I mean, that's a lot of parking spaces
Mm-hmm.
that you're asking for as a variance.
Well, we're only asking for really one in addition.
Why? But no, because now you're using the lower level, which was storage.
Which would only increase it by 65. The change of use of the lower level, hold on a second. The change of use of that 11,000 square feet necessitated an increase of 65 spaces. I understand what you're saying as it relates to the property as a whole from what the initial requirement was, but there was already variances issued for 1,601 spaces. And we're just asking that to be relaxed one more space.
All right, I'll let planning.
I missed the math. I thought it's 65 fewer because of the change of use in the cellar? You know, the requirement goes up by 65.
Yes, correct.
And the number of spaces goes down very small because of the generator.
Yes.
Does it go down by one? Is that what you're saying?
Yes.
Okay. So it's 66 worse if this is granted, if you will, or more substantial. And I gather what you're saying is that in comparison to what was previously granted, it's only like another straw on the camel's back kind of a thing.
Correct. And I don't think it's that one straw that would break it.
Right, I understand.
Yeah, there are approximately 191. There's 1,409 real parking spaces and then 191 land bank spots. That's
So
what
if it turns out that the additional usage generates a parking shortage, that land bank spaces could be utilized?
Yes.
Thanks.
Does TFCU use the whole building?
No, it's a multi-tenant building. Current Teachers is going to be using substantially most of the sixth floor. There is a small area of the sixth floor which is not designed out yet. It's still expansion space. Okay. The fifth floor, the first floor, and the lower level. 2, 3, and 4 currently have other tenants on them with minimal available space, I believe. Only a little bit on 4. The other floors are completely occupied.
So what's the occupancy overall? About 95% or something?
It's definitely in the 90s. I would think it's close, probably 90%. I could go back and do the calculation.
Well, there's normally always vacancy in large buildings. A certain percent is normally vacant anyway. The occupancy of, well, let me back up a second. There are 2 buildings on about a 19 to 20 acre piece of property, right? The 2,600 or 2,700 spaces that are required are not just for this half of the property, are they?
No, that's for the complex as a whole.
The whole complex.
Yeah.
It was a single site plan application.
Correct, and that's the way it's been maintained, even though Teachers purchased the half of the property.
That's my understanding. I just wanted to
Yeah.
confirm in my own mind that that's still the case.
Yeah, there wasn't any
Split.
split saying,
Okay.
okay, this is this and this is this, and
Is there anything that you know of in the other building, the other twin, in terms of their occupancy that might make the parking usage on the property today lower than what it would normally be?
not that I'm aware of. We would have to go back to the other owner to see what their occupancy rate is,
Yeah.
but I think it's pretty high as well.
Okay. I mean, just for me, as representing the planning department, I think there's a certain, some competing objectives here. On the one hand, I think the town really appreciates that teachers picked Smithtown as a place to have their headquarters, and we don't want to make them regret that. Yet, on the other hand, reducing the parking by almost 1,000 spaces, albeit right at this point only 65 more than what was previously approved, is a really big reduction. And if, just to use a hypothetical, because I'm not familiar with the occupancy of either of the buildings, if the other one is only 20% occupied, but once the economy rebounds and they fill up, there might be a serious fire hazard if people can't park anywhere and they're parking in aisles and stuff like that. And while that might be untrue because maybe they're 90% occupied as well, there's no information here, at least for the department, to make a recommendation to the board that pretty much it's a safe variance to grant from a safety standpoint. If you understand what I mean. I mean, you may have more knowledge of the occupancy of the property than I do.
No, understood. Of the 100 building, I do not have that much knowledge of it.
You know, again, I can't swear to that part of it, but I believe it's pretty full. I think it's just about full.
Okay.
In essence, one of the major tenants in our building, the 102 building, as opposed to the 100 next to it, is Allstate Insurance, because they ran out of room in 100 and came over to 102 when that went in, and they occupied just about a floor.
Right.
The amount of the sixth floor that Mr. Morrissey made reference to that we're leaving empty for future expansion for us. It's not our intention to rent that space.
Right.
Same
So-
with the 5th floor.
Yeah, and we have some space on 5 we've allocated for hopefully continued growth.
If I could ask just a couple more questions.
Sure.
How many teachers, employees are there and would be there at full occupancy?
There's none there currently. We're in progress, and
It was in the
we have
400.
work with permits for work on 6, 5, and 1, and this lower piece is the last piece of the puzzle, if you will.
Right.
But I believe the total counts 200 and, just over 200, I think low twos, 220, top of my
Okay.
head.
Right.
And would that be likely in the foreseeable future to stay that way, or is that just the beginning of a large number of employees there?
What we've planned for and what the permits have gone for in terms of the build-out do include growth through
We did, if I can,
2015,
we did studies of the space requirements that we have, and we did it on initial, and when I say initial, we're actually moving people from 3 locations into this building. So our headquarters is at Farmingville. We outgrew that a number of years ago. We put up a building down at Holbrook with a large branch on the first floor on Sunrise Highway, 10,000 feet of office on the second. And then we ran out of room there. And in Smithtown on Main Street, we have a building that we lease with a branch on the corner of Main and Bank. And there's 5,000 feet of office up there that had some tenants. They went out. We started using that. So having this single headquarters location, the idea is to get everybody back under one roof. And that's what's going into it. Now, we've allocated space and done planning studies for 5 and 10 years out. But to more directly answer your question, initially, this initial staffing should be relatively stable for the first 5 years before
Okay.
we see any increases.
And how many square feet will you be occupying?
It was close to 80,
Okay.
80,000 square feet.
Um,
Now, again, I also would like to add that of the 11,000 and change square foot that we're looking to change the use of in the lower level, it's almost a 50-50 split of actual office space versus the meeting rooms and training rooms and whatnot. The training rooms themselves, which is, I actually have that square footage, bear with me. The office space of the lower level is 5,532 square feet, of which, and I'm sorry I didn't bring the plans with me, but there's no more load there, then I think we were saying it was about 30. It'll definitely be less than 50 people. And then of that balance, 5,745 square feet, which is meeting and training rooms, predominantly that's going to be used by the occupants of the building. Yes, at times they will bring folks from the branches in for larger meetings and some training here and there, but it's going to be predominantly for the people that are already in the building.
Okay. How occupied is the parking lot on the site?
There's a lot of room.
There was a lot of room. I would say that 80% of the north side of the building, and when I say the building, I mean the whole complex,
I understand.
is primarily empty all the times I've been there. And I've been there first thing in the morning, during the morning rush, and later on in the afternoon and stuff. The front side, the south side, is 80 to 90% full most of the time. So, I mean, there is a good amount of parking that remains unoccupied at this point.
Okay. I don't have the site plan in front of me. My recollection is the parking in the north is smaller than the parking to the south. The buildings are sort of the north of the property. I'm trying to remember.
I don't think it's small, to tell you the truth. I mean,
Well,
I'm trying to
almost the
picture
same.
the number of rows that I can see there. But my comment was going to be, while he's getting that, is that one of our considerations in purchasing the building was concerned over parking, and we made numerous visits at various times of day and various days of the week,
Right.
looking at available spots to make sure that it looked like we had plenty of room.
Sure.
Right now, typically when I'm there in the morning for construction meetings.
Do me a favor, take the mic and bring it with you.
Or I'll use my amazing eyeglasses and look from over here if you want.
No, that's okay. The,
You should show them now, really.
Yep.
Yeah.
typically in the morning when I get there, it's really this area that's full. Usually these several back rows are empty. Nobody really parks over on this side, which is the east side, southeast corner. Nobody's parking really in here, and nobody, except for the first couple rows typically. Now we have a lot more people parking there because all the contractors are on site. But again, usually from what I've seen, that whole north side has been relatively empty.
Do you think that you've been there often enough times to say that that's a pattern?
We've been coming to the building now for about 4 months, 5 months.
Okay.
So, yeah.
Well, earlier tonight, there was a study that had 3 nights they were at the property. You know.
Oh, yes.
Okay, so that might have been a very small sample, and it might have been an anomaly. But if you go there regularly and...
I'm there at least once a week.
Okay, thanks.
Okay. Any other questions? Gentlemen?
No.
Thank you. Okay. Thank you so much. Is there anyone here that would like to be heard on this application? Hearing none, I'll entertain a motion to close the hearing. Yeah.
So moved.
All right.
Second?
It's already moved in second. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
You realize there is no action tonight? Okay. Thank you. Good night. Next case is case 16372, Gaetano Di Pasquale, 20 Links Road, Smithtown. Location, north side of Links Road, west of Croft Lane, Smithtown, property zone R43. Request variance to increase the proposed attached garage from 750 square feet to 832 square feet, reduce the minimum side yard from 24 feet to 17, reduce the total side yard from 60 to 40. May I have your
Good
name
evening.
and address?
My name is Gaetano Di Pasquale. I am the owner at 20 Links Road, Smithtown.
Right. Raise your right hand, please. Do you swear to tell the whole truth and nothing but the truth?
I do. As you said, I'm here to request a variance for a garage that I plan on building on my property. As you know, the garage is proposed to be from basically 832 square feet. I'm going to require a reduced minimum side yard from 24 to 17 feet, which will reduce total yard from 60 to 40 feet. In answering the 5 questions, in particular the first one, whether or not me building this garage would cause any undesirable effects on the neighborhood, I would say absolutely not. In fact, when I plan on building this garage, I also plan on remodeling the front of my house and upgrading it and modernizing it to reflect what's been going on in my neighborhood, which basically a lot of people have been doing that. I also like to mention that this side yard setback, which is going to basically reduce it to 17 feet, is still going to be more than adequate for any type of emergency vehicles or maintenance trucks and so on that would still be able to go into my backyard if need be for whatever reason. Two other of my neighbors have also applied for similar variances and actually have obtained them. One in particular is number 12 Links Road, which back on May 24, 2006, requested a variance. I provided photos C and D of the two homes. And they also requested and received a variance setback of 24 feet to 17 feet. Number 10 Links Road, back on August 16, 2006, had an approval of a setback from 24 feet to 9 feet, which is a lot smaller than what I'm asking for. In terms of why I need a garage, well, I'm one of the few homes on Links Road that doesn't even have a garage right now. I do have 3 vehicles that are parked in my driveway, not to mention lawn equipment, which is not parked in my driveway, but I do have lawn equipment, mowers, snow blower, a flatbed trailer, which I used to lug things around with. This garage would not only give me a place to put all this stuff, but also would take the place of any shed, which I would never need in that. So it would be more than enough room for me to put everything in there, and then the attic space above that would be more than sufficient for what I need. I like to also say that I cannot achieve these this garage anyplace else other than where I want to put it, because to put it on the other side of my house, that particular part of the house is where my cesspools are, so you wouldn't be able to build on that. I guess somebody could say, well, why don't you put it in your backyard? But the problem with that would mean I would have to cut down a bunch of trees and now pave an additional 250 or whatever feet of driveway, which, again, I'm sure that would also trigger another variance, and it's, again, I really don't want to do that. If you've been to my property, you could see that where this is going to be put is basically on my existing driveway. It's going to be minimum effect to the environment at all. In fact, the DEC, which I happen to be in that zone, I had needed to get approval from them. They did grant me the approval for my project on February 15th, 2011, and they issued me a permit. The number was 147340148700006. I also provided all that paperwork when I applied. And the last thing, the actual why I'm here, I obviously did not cause the need for this. I'm in an R43 zone area. My front yard is 100 feet wide, and I'm 600 feet deep. So I'm sort of like on a bowling alley, and there's no other way I really could see to do this. And the overall, at the end of this, the neighborhood is going to benefit because, again, I'm upgrading my house. I'm adding a garage. It'll be very tasteful, and I hope that you guys agree and grant the variance.
Thank you. Planning? Gentlemen? Thank you so much.
Thank you.
Is there anyone here that would like to be heard on this application? Hearing none, I'll entertain a motion to close the hearing.
So moved.
Really moved in second. All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carries. That concludes our hearings for tonight. Thank you so much.